Welcome to another edition of the Pipeline Podcast. All season long, I've been chatting with Blue Jackets prospects. Today, I want to chat about Blue Jackets prospects, and there's no better person for that than Rick Nash. You're the guy that's in charge of all of the development for Blue Jackets prospects, and I just kind of want to do a season wrap-up kind of conversation. You know, talk about David Yurichek, talk about Jordan Dume, Luca Del Bellus, where those guys are at in the mind of the Blue Jackets organization. So you game for that?
I'm game. It's exciting to talk about these guys because we're at an exciting point with this in this franchise and this organization, so I'm up for it.
All right, let's get started talking about David Yurichek. He just finished second among all teenagers in scoring in the American Hockey League behind his countryman, Yuri Kulik. We saw him in the National Hockey League at a couple of different points this season, one early and one late. Obviously had a terrific first year coming over to North America from the Czech Republic. So the organization's thoughts on David Yurichek's development in year one in this system?
Yeah, we're very happy with what David's accomplished this year. Obviously, just to start off, it's just not myself that does this development. We got some good coaches with Derek Dorsett, Jarkko Ruutu, and Nick Backstrom, and Brad Thiessen. So it's a full team event going into these guys, and obviously there's a lot of hope for David's game. He had a great game in the AHL. The coaches are obviously doing the day-to-day stuff with him, and I think they've brought his game along to the next level. Obviously, we got to see him here in Columbus a few times, and I think it's important for him to get that NHL feel and that NHL speed, so when he comes back next year, he might have a little bit of an easier adjustment. But as far as David goes, he's got a strong game that kind of checks a lot of boxes with him being a bigger guy. He can move the puck, he can shoot the puck, he can play hard, he can play on the power play, he can play on the PK. So we're very excited about his development and where he's come from drafting him.
Was his success this season a surprise to you or a surprise to this organization? Because it is a big leap, right? I know he was playing professionally over in the Czech Republic, but he's still a teenager at 19 years old. He's playing in a men's league in the AHL. That can be difficult for some players, but he seemed to handle it very, very well right from the start.
Yeah, I think you forget his age sometimes, and I know you've chatted with him and spent some time with him, and sometimes you got to remind yourself how old he actually is, because he's been around the men's game and the pro game for so many years that he seems like a veteran already, but you don't want to rush it, and I think Jarmo's made some great decisions on where to place these guys to make sure that we're not putting them in a vulnerable position here at the NHL. And though David's game has come a long way from the start of it, I think we're pleasantly, I wouldn't say surprised, but we're happy with it, because we expect a lot out of David, and taking him that high in the draft, we think he's a very good player. So I think he's just got a big summer ahead of him, as mostly, whether you're a prospect or a 10-year veteran, everyone has a big summer in front of them where they got to get bigger, faster, and stronger.
All right, I was talking to Jarmo Kekalainen the other day, and he mentioned how you guys project players. I know you don't want to talk about, what David Yurichek could be too much in the NHL, right, or comparing him to current pros, but what do you guys see for David Yurichek?
Yeah, it's interesting how you get into the projections, and I've only been doing it for a few years, and when you talk to Jarmo about it, he's obviously been through a lot of years of this, and it's kind of fun to get his insight and figure out where he kind of slots guys in. For myself, I try to project David as a 1-2 defenseman in the NHL. I think when a player gets drafted, that's high. That has to be your hopes for him. I will say I think it's harder for a defenseman to break in the league, and going back for pucks, playing hard in the corners, just all those little things that you can sometimes hide as a winger. And I think as a defenseman and a centerman, it's a bit tougher. And with David being a defenseman, it's going to be tough. It's going to be an adjustment, and he might start playing, 6-5-4 position minutes. I don't know if he's going to jump right into the 1-2 D spot, but that's where I hope he gets to in the pinnacle of his career.
Blue Jackets obviously selected David Yurichek 6th overall in Montreal this past summer. 6 picks later, they picked another defenseman, a guy playing in the Western Hockey League, Denton Matechuk. David Yurichek, a big right-shot defenseman. Denton Matechuk, a little bit smaller in stature. He's a left-shot defenseman, but he's very, very thick. David Yurichek is tall and lanky. Denton Matechuk is kind of shorter and stockier. Their games are a little bit different, but can you tell us about Denton Matechuk and what you saw from him this season?
Yeah, with Denton, he's obviously the captain of his team there in Moose Jaw, and he's a real leader. A lead by example kind of kid, heart and soul type player. This guy plays in all different situations. He feels like he's someone that is a Blue Jacket. The way he battles, the way he competes. He can take over a game by his skating and his skill. He can skate from one end down to the other. He's a player that we saw a lot, me and Derek Dorsett, because Martin Reishavi was in Moose Jaw. So it was kind of funny that we got to see him before his draft year. And every game that I would go to then would do something to stick out. And it's funny, this season he's been good, but you just look at his minutes, and he's 28 to 30 minutes a game. He's almost playing half the game, and so sometimes as a development coach, you wish that was maybe a little less more, but he's someone that I'm very excited to have in our prospect pool.
All right, let's talk about his projection then. He's one of the top scoring defensemen in the WHL, but there's so much more to his game than just offense, right? When I've heard people talk about Denton Matechuk and when he was drafted, people like to describe him as, the prototypical modern defenseman. Like Cale Makar is that, but a right shot D in the National Hockey League right now. He can do it all. Play the PK, play the power play, great 5-on-5. What do you see for Denton Matechuk when he does make it to the next level?
Yeah, I see him as a complete defenseman as well. Obviously on his height side, he's not as tall as David is, but I feel like in today's NHL, as long as you're skating and your edges are good, you can roll off a lot of these checks anyways. You think about a Cale Makar and Adam Fox. These guys aren't the biggest guys, but they just have such good edges that they can always roll off checks. And Denton's the same way. When he goes back for pucks to break the puck out of his own zone, he can spin and he can ride his edges, almost using the other teams or the other players' momentum to create a faster edge for himself. So he plays in all situations, like you mentioned. He's very active along the offensive zone blue line. He can deke guys out easy. He can sniff holes and breakdowns in the offensive zone where he gets himself open for points. So I like that assessment that you said, that he's kind of the modern day NHL defenseman, which is we obviously hope he gets to.
All right, let's keep talking about some more Blue Jackets defensemen, and a guy that we actually just got to see in the NHL. I'm not sure that anybody's stock rose quicker, anybody made more noise than Stanislav Svozil this year. A lot of people love talking about David Yurichek, but it just so happened that Stan Svozil got the opportunity to play with Connor Bedard, so a lot of eyeballs were on Stanislav Svozil all season long, and the eyeballs of the fifth line just got to see him here at Nationwide Arena a few days ago. He was able to pick up his first career point in his first NHL game, played in Cleveland the other night, had 2 assists in his first AHL game. What makes Stanislav Svozil so special? Blue Jackets selected him in the 3rd round a couple of years ago now, but a lot of people think maybe he should have gone higher.
Yeah, this is a real interesting player in Stan, just because his hockey sense, which I believe is at NHL level. And Derek Dorsett's obviously done a bunch of work with him in Regina, and worked with his coaches there, and really what I feel is brought his game to the next level. This year in particular, he's been a different type player on the puck, a lot more confident. A lot more believing in himself to make those plays, and obviously he's played around some special players. But Stan's been a big part of the hype there in Regina, just because his game has been so good, and it's not only the offensive side of the puck. Stan has also become a pretty good defender, and he's one thing for our fans and the fifth line to watch is his timing on stepping up and making some pretty big hits. So I think as Stan kind of becomes more comfortable in his body, he gets stronger. I think that aspect of his game is something that's kind of underrated, but we take a lot of pride in.
Another guy who is one of the top scoring D-man in the WHL, along with Denton Matechuk this season. So offense is a huge part of his game, but could you believe it when we saw him at Nationwide Arena the other day? Like, a guy making the leap from the WHL to the NHL. That's not easy, but I thought he looked pretty comfortable, all things considered.
Yeah, I thought he looked good, and I felt like I had to kind of massage Dorse's mind and his brain and his ego before the game, because it felt like me last year with Kent Johnson when he came up, and it's like your child's kind of graduating to the next stage of school, and Dors had some fun with getting to watch Stan play his first NHL game, but it shows the pride that kind of we take in this organization. We obviously want to win, but we want to see, we understand how important of a job we have to do, and to see Stan come to Nationwide, and for me, he held his own. It's tough to come in and play against NHL guys and guys that are been in the league for a long time, and I thought Stan did great. I thought his hockey sense stood out even at the NHL level, even past exhibition games in Traverse City. So I think as long as he gets stronger, faster, a little quicker, I think he's going to be an NHL defenseman.
Another guy who made the leap to pro hockey this season is Corson Ekblad. Finished up his sophomore year at the University of Wisconsin. Remember, the Blue Jackets picked him 25th overall in the 2021 NHL entry draft. I feel like a lot of people talk about the first two Blue Jackets first-round picks there, and rightly so, Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger, but the Blue Jackets had 3 first-round picks in 2021, and the final one was Corson Ekblad. You and I talked about Corson last year, and he was a big project, right? Corson Ekblad was a raw defenseman when the Blue Jackets drafted him, finished up his sophomore year at Wisconsin, got games with the Cleveland Monsters. So where are you at now with Corson Ekblad?
Yeah, I just feel like you're reminding me of how important my job is as we keep talking about.
There's a lot of guys to talk about
all
now.
These first rounders and the position we're in, and I'm doing everything, or our team is doing everything we can to get them to become Blue Jackets. But I think Corson's on the right track. He spent two years at the University of Wisconsin and playing for Tony Granato, who's been around the NHL for a long time, and I think Corson learned a lot there. But I will say, since he's got to Cleveland, I feel like he's taken his game to the next level. And finally, we have him in-house and under our umbrella, and having our coaches who we think are great down in Cleveland working with him. And in my office, I share an office space with Chris Clark, who's the GM of Cleveland, and they were really impressed in his, number one, his hockey sense, number two, his work ethic, and just the way that he read the game. So. Corson has put a lot of work in, and he's really developed his game to fit a pro style. So, again, I hate coming back to this, but it's going to be up to these guys to get bigger, faster, and stronger for them to take that next step at the pro level. But some of these guys like Stan and David and Corson, even Dan, it's funny because you watch them and they have some intangibles that you can't really teach. But that's why they're all high draft picks and drafted to the NHL. So Corson, I think will take the next step and keep getting better. But we really like how he's come out of Wisconsin and played for Cleveland.
I love having the opportunity to talk to all of these players throughout the season, and especially when I can talk to them, 1 year and then the year later to see how much they've grown. And I think really one of the most fascinating conversations I had this season was with Corson Ekblad, because to be completely honest, when I talked to him the first time, a little bit young, a little bit immature, and I think that's what everybody talked about. He had some growing up to do. And when I talked to him this year, it was like I was talking to a completely different player. And I asked him, what changed this year? Because he said as much, that something changed for him during the season. And I think he just said that, with a month or so left in his year, he kind of realized what you have to do to become a pro, pick up some of those pro habits and do it consistently. And I just feel like he's taken not just his game, but himself to another level where he is trying to be that pro now. So it's interesting to hear you say those things about, what Chris Clark and the coaching staff in Cleveland thought about him, because it's great for Blue Jackets fans to hear that, right? That a guy who was a bit of a project is taking that next step, and not just as a player, but, as maturing as a person as well, because people forget Denton Matechuk, Corson Ekblad's 18 years old, 19 years old. So it's fascinating for me to see players do that. But when I asked you about Corson Ekblad's last year, I asked maybe a pro comparable, and you said Seth Jones, similarities in their games. Has anything changed from that? What do you see for Corson Ekblad?
Yeah, you know what? It's tough to say, and just to touch on what you were talking about, what I learned in this job, you're developing a person too. You're trying to teach them your knowledge on how to be a professional NHL hockey player, and a big piece of that is off-ice habits and how you prepare, and post-game, how you treat your body, and so Corson has come a great way to get to where he is. NHL comparables, it's tough to say, but Seth's obviously one of the best defensemen in the league, and I think Corson could get there someday if he really works hard at it. But as I said before, I think I shared this with you, that I think Seth might be a little better defender and Corson might have a little better offensive upside at his ceiling. But again, he was just someone to relate to our fans. I think Corson will kind of find his own way to the NHL and be his own player, but just someone to so they can kind of get a visual on Corson with Seth.
Yeah, perfect. That's all I'm looking for. I don't want you to say that this guy is
to me, right?
No, absolutely not. I'm not saying that this player is going to be Seth Jones, but he's a long, lanky, right shot defenseman who has some offensive ability, like you said. So yeah, sure, the comparables there. I want to ask you about one more defenseman, and that's Guillaume Richard. I think he had a very quiet season this year at Providence College, former 4th-round draft pick by the Blue Jackets, but the Blue Jackets are high on that player, specifically after last season. I remember talking with Chris Clark about Guillaume Richard at that point, and he loved his pro habits, loved the defensive game, but where does the organization stand on Guillaume Richard now? Because like I said, I feel like we didn't hear a whole lot about him this year.
His, you know what, that's how he plays his game. I mean, this is, sometimes you watch a defender and when they have a really good game, you don't notice them. They don't stick out, good or bad. They're just so consistent. And I find with Guillaume, he has that attribute towards his game. He is solid every single game. He makes the high percentage plays. He plays hard defensively. He's got really good edge work in his skating that sometimes he's hard to knock off the puck. And this is still a guy that I'm very excited about. I think he's going to have a long pro career, I truly believe. But he's someone just not as flashy maybe as some of our other draft picks. And maybe he's not as high, drafted as the other guys. But this kid puts the work in every single day. And I have high hopes for him in our future.
Yeah, I only bring him up because I know you feel that way about him, and I want Blue Jackets fans to know that as well, right? There's more people to be excited about than just the high draft picks, because if you look historically, Jarmo Kekalainen and his staff have done a great job at finding gems like that in the mid to late rounds. And I'll ask you about one of those players in just a moment, as now we'll transition over to talking about some forwards. But let's start off in chronological order of how they were drafted. Luca Del Bellus. Blue Jackets select him in the 2nd round this past summer in Montreal. A lot of people had Luca Del Bellus with a 1st-round grade, but the Blue Jackets were able to pick him up in round 2. Started the year off in Mississauga, got traded to Sarnia at the OHL trade deadline. Just scored a big overtime winner in the playoffs a couple of days ago. What do you guys like about Luca Del Bellus, other than his incredible name?
Yeah, right. With Luca, hockey sense is number one. This guy knows where the puck's going to go. He has that feel. He has that read on the ice. He's someone that's kind of came into his own as the trade happened. It seems like he's taken his game to the next level. He's obviously a centerman, which we're hungry for. He's a true centerman. And he's someone that just understands how to play in the defensive zone, how to play in the neutral zone, how to play in the O zone. So he's kind of an all-around center. And I hate coming back to all this, but it's just a matter of these guys to take that next step in their speed. He's going to need some more explosiveness. First 3 steps is going to be a big key for him. But like you said, he was touted. Some lists had him in the 1st round, and we thought we were very happy that he was still around by the time our pick came up. But off the ice, great kid. He's someone that is willing to put in the work to get to the next level. And I've had a lot of fun working with him and trying to make him understand what it takes to become a pro and to become a Blue Jacket.
He's a student of the game and a hockey nerd too, so I'm sure it's easy to work with a player like that.
It is. You know what? And credit to our amateur scouts. These guys put in so much work and try to do so many background checks. We want to draft on character, not just hockey on ice performance. So, to get these guys like a Kent Johnson, Kirill Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, you work with these guys daily. You know how much they love the game of hockey, and Luca fits right under that as well.
That's a big part of why I like doing these conversations with the prospects too, and allowing our fans to kind of get a look into those guys' lives before they're with the Blue Jackets. And it's so impressive to me. all of them are really good guys. Like, there's not one guy that I've come across and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that guy. Like, every guy, I feel like we have a stellar conversation, and beyond just, knowing things about the game of hockey or having a good personality, they're just nice people. And I think that's really, really important. And I like that the Blue Jackets, factor that into what they're bringing into the organization. And it's funny, and maybe it's not a coincidence that a lot of the guys are similar in that sense, that they kind of all have, I think how you describe it is they're Blue Jackets, and I think a lot of the guys have that, so it's pretty interesting. With Luca Del Bellus, do you see a pro comparable for him, or is there a player that his game reminds you of? And I only ask because he is that traditional centerman. He can play the two-way game. He's got pretty good size. He's got good skill. So there's a lot to like there, but I'm curious if he reminds you of anybody.
Yeah, it's tough with these kids to project them, because I always project them at their ceiling, And
all right, let's hear it.
Sometimes I can get in trouble with those projections, as anything that gets put on the internet is on there for life. So, but with him, I think of playmaking centers that play a 200-foot game, whether it's Strome, Backstrom, obviously, ceiling player.
Right.
But, picture those guys that are pass-first mentality players that, would rather get an assist over a goal, and that's kind of Luca's game. Me and him have talked a lot about D-zone coverage, playing harder, playing more firm, more engaged. We've talked a lot about pace, AHL level, NHL level. The pace is just that much faster than the OHL. So, when I project Luca, those are some of the guys that, are on my wish list that I hope he turns into, and I think he has the skill in the hockey sense. As I say to a lot of the guys, I can't come to the gym with you and do a couple reps and do a couple sets for you, or else I would. And I can't do it. So with a lot of these guys, it's, you want to guide them as far as you can, but it's going to be up to them.
All right, you just said a few moments ago the Blue Jackets were pleasantly surprised to find Luca Del Bellus sitting there when they were able to pick in the second round. A guy that the Blue Jackets were able to select late in the third round, almost the fourth round, is Jordan Dume. I'm sure a lot of Blue Jackets fans are familiar with Jordan Dume's game. Just set a Halifax Mooseheads record for points in a season, right up there with Connor Bedard in CHL scoring all season long. What makes Jordan Dume so special? Because he's got a pretty unique game.
Very special game. He's definitely a special player. Obviously, I just talked about it with Luca, but he might even be next level at knowing where the puck's going to be. He has that sixth sense that just allows him to get to the open areas and find the puck, and he's got a great release, a great shot, so he can put the puck home pretty fast. Interesting season for him. He put up points nonstop at a crazy rate, and you almost want to get your hands on him just to get him to the next level to see where he fits in there. But obviously with the rules and stuff, it's tough. But very nice kid, very respectful, special shot, special release. And you know what? One thing that surprised me in Traverse City was the compete that he played with. Mm-hmm. He was dog on bone on the puck. He was. That really stood out to me in Traverse City. So he's another player that obviously by his point total, we're very excited, but there's other intangibles in his game that are very good.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things where I feel like when maybe you read some of the scouting reports on Jordan Dume and things like that, the compete does come up, but I remember reading an article over the summer where they talked with his coaches there, and they're like, this guy finishes first in everything. Our off-season workouts, he's finishing first in. He competes like nobody else, and I am curious to see what this next year looks like for Jordan Dume, because like you said, it's not like he can get into the Blue Jackets system and be a pro right away. He's got to wait a little bit. It looks like he'll probably play for Team Canada at the World Junior. He got the invite to camp this last year, but didn't make the final roster. So it's a big year for Jordan Dume. It's kind of a strange year for Jordan Dume because he tore it up in the queue the last two seasons, and I expect we'll see some historic numbers, assuming he stays healthy and everything next year. But, I feel weird asking this question because, like I said, his skill set is so unique, but does he remind you of anybody? I just feel like the way that he plays when I watch him is so interesting.
Yeah, that's a tough one because we do have him, as a special player. He doesn't fit into many columns with Jordan. But just to talk on a little bit what you were saying before is we're going to have to be careful with him on setting his goals and, making sure we're realistic at where his game's at. When you put up that many points, you can sometimes see your style of game change. And the player that he was in Traverse City was the player that we want him to be. Whether he scores 3 goals or no goals, the way he played in Traverse City was incredible. As for projections and similarities,
it's tough at this point.
It's really tough. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's so hard. He's a smaller winger that can score with any shot, has the opportunity of going in, but to put an NHL name on him, it might be hard right now.
Maybe a better question would be, did the Blue Jackets imagine that he could explode the way that he has this season when he was drafted? Because I feel like when Jordan Dume was drafted, people were like, yeah, the Blue Jackets took a flyer on this guy. He could be a really special player. We'll wait and see. But I feel like he's really garnered more respect around the NHL and the scouting community after the season he put together this year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think the numbers are kind of proof of what he can do. But in saying that, once you get up and you're playing against NHL guys or AHL guys, the game's going to change a little bit, and it's the players that can succeed at the next level are the ones that are going to have long careers, and we believe Jordan can do that. But it's a tricky thing, and I hope he doesn't worry about kind of earning that respect around the league. As you said, as he has a great season, other people start talking about him. Obviously, our amateur scouts knew something that a lot of teams didn't.
Credit to them.
Yes, there's a lot of credit to them for taking him. And I just, with his game, I always come back to he was one of our best players in Traverse City in all 3 zones, in hunting the puck down on the forecheck, getting pucks back. So, we just want to make sure Jordan develops in the right way, and we're in a bit of a tricky position with him not having many options.
In Traverse City, he had the opportunity to play with both Kent Johnson and Kirill Marchenko, and I know those guys aren't technically prospects anymore. They played a lot of games for the Blue Jackets in the National Hockey League this season, but since Kent Johnson kind of was your baby, right, or maybe is still your baby, that was like your first guy, 5th overall pick, you know what I mean? You were helping him into the NHL. What do you think of his first season in the league?
I thought he had a great season. I was really impressed by his game. The one positive thing was I thought he got better as the season went on. Yeah. He started to figure out his game even more. He understood when to take a chance, when not to take a chance, and so I thought he was very good. He's going to have to bring his game to the next level. He's going to play against different combinations next year, harder competition. The NHL is going to know about him now, how skilled he is and how he can make plays. So, in my opinion, Ken had a great first season.
Cole Sillinger didn't necessarily have the year that he wanted in the NHL this year. Blue Jackets had the opportunity to send him to Cleveland towards the end of the year, and by all accounts, a lot of the guys loved him down there, and he did exactly what the Blue Jackets wanted him to do in Cleveland. It was a big assignment for Cole Sillinger last year to play in the National Hockey League at 18 years old. He was the only guy from that draft to play the entire season in the league last year, and I think he obviously exceeded expectations and, maybe set expectations a little high for himself this year, at least among the fan base, right? Thinking that he was going to put up massive numbers, but it's a learning experience for a player like that who's still just 19 years old.
Yeah, for sure. He's another guy that you kind of forget how young he is. He's a player that came in and blew expectations out of the water his first season. And, obviously his second year starting camp with an injury and then, moving in and trying to find his game and not having much success. You know what kind of character he is. You know what kind of person he is. You know that he's going to put the work in to have a bounce back season. So, you just make sure that he kind of goes about it with a positive attitude because you can't really change anything that's happened this past season. And he went down to Cleveland. He was a great teammate. He was a big part of the on-ice stuff, and he's going to be a good professional. So I'm looking forward to seeing his demeanor once he gets back into town for training camp.
You were 18, 19 years old in the National Hockey League one day. Can you believe the way that he's kind of handled this? He's mature beyond his years. Everybody talked about that when he made the Blue Jackets last year, but it's just another step for him, right? Because there's some adversity thrown his way in this season, and he's handled it like a pro.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, it would be so easy for a guy to feel sorry for himself. It would be easy to kind of go the other direction, not put the work in after practice, before practice. But I think he truly gets it, that the only way out of something like that is to outwork it and put the work in and kind of do the extra reps, whether it's on the ice, in the gym. Try to give yourself the best opportunity while staying positive, because you're on a team and it's not easy for an 18, 19-year-old to figure that out. But I think we've had a lot of good veterans around him too in the room to help him through this. And it would just be nice to have him have a quick start next year and just kind of forget about this whole thing that happened.
A huge positive for the Columbus Blue Jackets this year was Kirill Marchenko, both on the ice and off the ice. He's an unbelievable character in that room and with the media. I think an easy fan favorite and a quick fan favorite here in Columbus. But on the ice, he was unbelievable. New Blue Jackets goal record for rookies, passing first you and then Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously. Finished the year with 21 on the season. Could you have possibly imagined that Kirill Marchenko took this city by storm the way that he did?
Yeah, you know what? He did a great job at it too. And Jarkko Ruutu and Chris Clark have been working with this guy for a lot of years. And it seems like it's been a lot of years coming. And he didn't have the easiest start either. There was a lot of lineup projections, and he didn't make kind of that lineup. And he had to go down to Cleveland, and he had to earn it down there. And sometimes that's the best thing for guys is to see what's going on down there and then work your way back up. And there was a few times when he was even next in line and he got sick or he got hurt, whatever it might have been, and he waited his turn. Then he came up and he just grabbed it, and there was no looking back. He's a guy we're very excited about, and just to think if he can take another step. He's got the shot, he's got the wheels, and mainly he's got the attitude that obviously everyone's fallen in love with. So very exciting Blue Jacket.
All right, this is obviously a huge summer for the Columbus Blue Jackets organization, and it starts with the draft lottery in a couple weeks' time. Monday, May 8th, the Blue Jackets will figure out where they're picking in the upcoming draft in Nashville. No matter how it shakes out, how excited are you for this offseason and to add another player and another really, really good player to this system?
Yeah, we're very excited. Obviously, it wasn't the season that we all thought it would be, but it's time to move on from that and to focus on the lottery. Once we find out which position we're taking, and then we'll start to go to work with our amateur scouts and figure out what's the best fit for the Blue Jackets. But it's an exciting time for the organization, especially for me working with all these kids and knowing what we have coming. It's very encouraging.
All right, Rick. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to break down all these different prospects that we talked about. Thanks all season long for being gracious with your time, and best of luck helping these guys to develop going forward. And when it comes down to it, best of luck at the draft this summer.
Thank you very much.
All right, that ends our Blue Jackets prospect conversations for this season. Now we're on to the draft. Can't wait to talk to you about it next week.